Hello everyone, I'm Susie and welcome back to Read Susie Read. Today I'm here to share with you the books that I read in December 2014. Minus graphic novels, although graphic novels are most certainly books, I'm going to do a whole separate video talking about the graphic novels that I have read recently. And you will see what I meant by read shortly. The first book that I completed in December 2014 was Not That Kind of Girl by Lena Dunham. This is a collection of essays by Lena Dunham, who is the writer, director, and creator of the HBO television show Girls, which I had not watched and knew very little bit about before reading this collection of essays. This collection of essays was published in 2014, and it was an interesting reading experience, especially since I was also reading alongside it for Lady Vimber, Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. What I liked about Not That Kind of Girl was the complete and total honesty of Lena Dunham's voice, which I had no idea is really kind of her thing. Like, she's kind of not afraid to be honest and brash, which was kind of refreshing. It's not necessarily my style of communicating, but I can admire it and someone else, especially a female, because I feel like men are given the opportunity to be a little more brash more often. What I didn't particularly like about Not That Kind of Girl, first off, was the amount of sex and the importance that Lena seems to put on sexuality, which I'm not necessarily against that, but it was kind of uncomfortable. And initially I didn't realize that the essays were separated into sections, which I should have noticed because they were titled and marked. But the whole first section is about love and sex. And I was thinking when I was reading it, wow, all she talks about is sex. But then I realized it was because that whole section was supposed to be about sex. But I didn't find that sex stopped being a main emphasis even in the later sections. Another thing that I didn't particularly enjoy about this book was at the very beginning of the book, it's kind of set up because she had a fascination and had read a few very stereotypical self-help books from seemingly the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, which put a lot of focus on a woman finding a man and being comfortable in their sexuality, and her being kind of against that idea. I mean, she enjoyed it and saw the merit in it, but also was trying to break that mold. But overall, I ended up feeling like the overall arc of the book was kind of about her finding a heterosexual life partner, and so that kind of negated breaking the mold for me personally. But overall, what I took away from this book was the importance of people in general, but specifically young females, using their voice honestly and genuinely, and figuring shit out is okay, even in a public atmosphere. She does say and do problematic things in the book and in her own life and in her career. I've overall found Lena Dunham's book to be kind of inspirational. And in case you're wondering, I gave it 3 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. Also, it encouraged me to watch the first 2 seasons of her show Girls, which I didn't hate. It's not perfect, but I enjoyed it. And the next book that I experienced in December 2014 was Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a piece of middle grade literature. It is a memoir written in verse. And typically, I have pretty middle-of-the-road feelings about literature written in verse. Usually, I feel like it's kind of gimmicky and it doesn't really serve any kind of purpose, but this is most certainly, absolutely an exception to that rule. I actually didn't read this book. I listened to it on Audible. I highly recommend experiencing it in that format. Although, one day I do hope to go back and read this book in the written format. If I'm completely honest, the thing that I loved the most about this story was how well she articulated her story. And it helped listening to it. It felt like I was sitting in a room and someone was telling me their story in bits and pieces, the way that stories are told in real life. Like, it felt like an oral history, but also it felt very personal and intimate. It was interesting to see the glimpses of her life that she chose to share to tell her story of being a young brown girl in the United States. She had the culture clashes of being in the South and in Brooklyn, New York, but also coming into her own with her writing, and her, from a child's perspective, seeing some of the civil rights things that were going on. And it was beautiful, and it was fascinating, and it was heartwarming. And the only thing that I can say that I didn't like about this book was that I could have gone on forever and it was just too short. And I know that feels like a cop-out, but I found myself being very sad when I realized that there were only a couple of minutes left of the story. Like, I could have listened to this woman tell her story and tell stories of her life indefinitely. The thing that I'm taking away from this book is that I need to experience more of Jacqueline Woodson's work. So if you have recommendations on where I should go next, because unfortunately I still haven't gone on to anything else. But since it is probably going to be February of 2015 when you see this, probably the perfect time to check it out, it being Black History Month and all. And the last book that I experienced in December 2014 was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, and I did actually read this one. I read it on my Kindle. This is a piece of historical literary fiction set before, during, and after World War II. It's set primarily in France, but it has some time hopping and location hopping. It's primarily the story of a young girl whose father works in a museum and her journey during World War II after going blind at a very young age. It also tells the story of a young German boy who is interested in mechanics and engineering, but is very poor and is likely to never achieve his dreams when he gets recruited into the Hitler Youth because of his brilliant mind and his ability to repair radios, unlike anyone his age or much older. Initially, I felt that the time hopping aspect of the book was kind of gimmicky and unnecessary, but as the story went on, it became something that I enjoyed. It added a certain amount of tension, and it helped with the pacing of the book quite a bit. I actually really liked the incredibly short chapters. It made the book go by quickly, even though it was like over 500 pages, and it was very, very engrossing. And even characters, additional side characters whose perspectives we saw that were obviously not supposed to be likable, I felt a certain amount of sympathy for. The only thing that I have really to say that I didn't like about this book was that at the moment it felt like a very important read, but over time it's proving to be one that's not really going to stick with me. It may be one that I revisit in the future, because overall I took away from it that I enjoy reading narratives that are surrounding war, whether it's people who are actually in battle or civilians who are being affected by it, whether they're close or far away, and I'm really interested in that, and this book just further cemented it. I did really enjoy this book, and I do think that this is a book that a lot of people will enjoy if you're into historical fiction, and don't let the literary fiction part of it intimidate you, because I feel like this is a very accessible and approachable book, even if it's over 500 pages. And those are all of the books that I experienced, minus graphic novels, which I will talk about in a video shortly. As always, please feel free to share your thoughts on any of the books that I mentioned here today. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon with a new video.